أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله ونحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. All praise is due to Allah. We praise Him and we seek help from Him. We ask forgiveness from Him. We repent to Him and we seek refuge in Him from our own evils and our own bad deeds. Anyone who is guided by Allah, he is indeed guided. And anyone who has been left astray will find no one to guide him. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, the only one without any partner. And I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is his servant and his messenger. In the first verse of Surah An-Nisa, Allah tells us, O mankind, show reverence towards your Lord who created you from a single person, created of like nature, his mate, and from the two of them scattered countless men and women. Be conscious of Allah, through whom ye demand your mutual rights, and show reverence towards the wombs that bore you, for surely Allah watches over you. So we contemplate the world that we observe today in light of this verse that Allah has spread us throughout the world. And has created for us the situation in which we live today. When we look at the world today, we can ask ourselves, why is there so much suffering in the world? And how can a merciful God allow so much pain and grief? If we're honest, this is a question that many of our agnostic, atheist friends might ask, and even other religious friends might ask of us as believing people when they observe the suffering in the world today. We know that pain and suffering are part of life, and it may not seem obvious at first, but they're evidence of God's wisdom. Allah, in His infinite wisdom, in His wisdom that cannot be completely contained by our minds, which are limited, which are finite, has created this world and has created it in a state of complementary opposites. So what do we mean by this fancy term, complementary opposites? So we can take an example. Light and darkness. Allah has created both. Light is something that stimulates sight and makes things visible. It causes awareness, both physical awareness, when you perceive what's in front of you through your eyes, as well as spiritual awareness, when your heart, as you purify it, can truly see the world around you and appreciate it. Darkness is the absence of light. When light goes out, there is darkness. Without light, we would not be able to know darkness. And without darkness, we would not appreciate the full usefulness and beauty of light. Which is why Allah in His wisdom created both. He created these opposites because the contrast between the two is necessary for us to appreciate the world around us. You could never fully understand life without death, bad without good, and love without hate. The opposites need each other. And then, when coming back to the question of suffering in the world, we can only truly appreciate comfort and ease because we know pain and suffering. We're only able to show courage after resisting the temptation of cowardice. And most of all, the example that captures this sunnah of Allah in creating our world is that Allah has created ignorance and knowledge. That we begin in ignorance, and we began in ignorance with the mithaq al-fitra. When Allah called us all before Him, and He gave us knowledge. We begin in ignorance, and Allah guides us to knowledge. So when contemplating this world, and in fact contemplating this universe, we know that the universe did not create itself. It didn't just happen by chance, because Allah guided us to that knowledge. We know in the Quran that He told us, Allah commanded, kun fayakun, be, and it is. And in that moment, the Big Bang happened. And according to what we understand through modern physics, in that moment, the entire universe was created. And subhanAllah, until today, it's continuing to expand and continuing to be created. So, this knowledge frames our understanding of this world. That we understand this universe was created in such a way through the wisdom of Allah. And we ask Allah to continue to guide us to knowledge so that we may understand the world around us today. As we further contemplate the world, we know, most importantly, that Allah created the world and He created everything with a purpose. Allah tells us in Surah Al-Dhariyat, ayah 56, لَقَدْ خَلَقْتَ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created jinn and human beings except to worship me. Our purpose as human beings, as children of Adam and Eve, as custodians and guardians of this planet Earth, Khalifatul Allah, is simply to know, to love, and obey Allah. So how do we understand suffering in light of this? That we know that our purpose of creation is to worship Allah. When we understand this, then Allah begins to lift the veils of ignorance from our eyes. Through this knowledge, Allah gives us all ordinary sight, basar. But when you seek to perfect your worship of Allah, when you seek His knowledge to further establish your relationship with Him, Allah gives that believer something more. Basira, a penetrating inner sight, the ability to see the hidden meaning of things. This is a reward for taming the lower nafs and purifying your spiritual heart and constantly seeking to keep it healthy and sound, seeking that knowledge from Allah. This heart, qalb salim, enables you to better understand the world around you. The more one is able to purify one's heart, the clearer it becomes to see that Allah has created things as complementary opposites. And the easier it is to understand pain and suffering in that manner. The poet Jalaluddin Rumi said that suffering is a gift, in it is a hidden mercy. And this is where we get to the meaning of pain and suffering, why it's happening, like why Allah has created it. Suffering teaches us patience, sabr, and it also teaches us rida, which is total reliance on Allah and a serene acceptance of whatever Allah decrees. It teaches us to persevere, to work hard to seek Allah's good pleasure, His ridwan. Most importantly, it teaches us humility and compassion for those less fortunate than we are. If we ourselves never knew pain or suffering, we might see those around us who are in hardship as deserving of that hardship due to some flaw in their character or their belief. You could see a poor person on the street, and as some American social and political philosophies say, there's one called social Darwinism. And what it basically says is the poor person is poor because there's something wrong with them. They weren't good enough to become rich. And we see that sometimes in our political dialogue. There are other products and philosophies of our society that say the opposite. And we know, because we understand suffering and pain through the lens that Allah has given us, through the Quran, and through this knowledge that He's created everything in complementary opposites. That suffering and pain is only the other side of ease and happiness, and that every human being goes through this. So when we see people suffering, we don't think, hey, that person is poor because there's something wrong with them. We realize that that person is suffering because Allah has given them that test, as Allah tests all of us. And this inspires in us compassion. And this inspires in us humility. And without these two things, see, through Allah's knowledge and through contemplating His world, we get to compassion and humility. And it's with these two things and through these two things that we further submit to Allah. And it is only through these things that we can truly open up our worship to Him. And that's the beauty of the way that Allah has designed this world and designed our lives and written them, is that through seeking His knowledge we become closer to Him. And through becoming closer to Him we gain greater knowledge. And through this we're better able to understand ourselves and the world that Allah has created around us. The Prophet ﷺ taught us how fortunate is the believer. He endures hardship and it is good for him because it teaches him patience. Then he enjoys relief from hardship and it is good for him because it allows him to be grateful to Allah. If we don't have this knowledge, then we don't know that Allah has a plan and we can't begin to accept it. Then we wouldn't understand our place in the universe. We wouldn't understand even the Big Bang in the same way. We wouldn't know who we really are or why we're here, where we've come from and where we're going to. The Prophet ﷺ reminded us that it's vital to have this type of self-knowledge. He exhorted us to go towards this type of knowledge when he said, "He who knows himself knows his Lord." This type of knowledge and faith is something to be grateful for and not arrogant about. That we have this gift of Iman, this gift of faith to illuminate our way through life's challenges. Sometimes we see in the world around us, people will take the taste of faith they've been given and allow it to make themselves feel better than others. Or even worse, to use it as a tool to put down others. If we know that Allah is in control, if we know that Allah has created this world in the way that He has, we know through Him, we know of Him, and we know goodness, and we know evil. Then we shouldn't be angry, and we shouldn't be arrogant about our faith. Because I know that it wasn't me who chose this. I know Allah destined this for me, so I can be humble. When I speak about my faith, I can do so through humility and not arrogance. And this is something very important for us to remember. And this will open up for us this basira, this ability to see the world in a deeper way and to understand suffering and pain in a deeper way. In many places in the Quran, Allah tells us, "Ala inna awliya Allah la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun." Behold, on the friends of Allah there is no fear and no grief. No fear and no grief, and yet if you study the friends of Allah, Ibrahim a.s. as the best example, you will find that their lives were filled with incredible hardship, pain, and tasks to endure. This also gives us a lesson in that Allah has created this world of complementary opposites, of pain and suffering, good and evil. But it wasn't because He wanted to punish us. Ibrahim a.s. wasn't made to endure suffering and hardship because Allah wanted to punish him. Allah loved all of His prophets. He used this to teach him, to help Ibrahim a.s. become even better than he was, and to expand his wisdom even more than it was. And we've benefited from that throughout time. If we take them as an example, through them Allah taught us rida, this wonderful and serene acceptance of His will. It can help us be islands of calm in oceans of turbulence. And this is what our world needs today. Awareness that suffering won't last forever, that suffering's opposite, ease, is already part of that experience and is waiting to be revealed to us. And that the experience of suffering is only a test. In Surah Ash-Sham, Ayah 6, Allah tells us, "Inna ma'al usri yusra." Indeed, with hardship will be ease. And on that note, I'll end the first khutbah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. ادعوا الله. Praise Allah. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. So when we're confronted with such questions, why are we here? Where do we come from? What is our reason for being? We first ask ourselves and ask Allah for help and ask for His knowledge, because that is what will help us answer such questions. We ask, "Oh my Lord, grant me knowledge. Rabbi zidni ilma." And you can make the dua that Musa a.s. made before he went to speak to Fir'aun. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Oh my Lord, open my chest with wisdom, make my task easy for me, and remove the knot from my tongue so that they may understand. Let us, through a deeper understanding of our faith, become like those who Allah refers to as yatafakkarun, people who contemplate, people who reflect, people who understand, people who can see the balance that Allah has created in this world in His wisdom. between light and darkness, good and evil, joy and suffering, in order to help us learn the true meanings of such things, to help us learn the true meanings of beauty and understand the true depth and breadth of worshiping Allah, which we were placed on this earth to do and which this test of life is all about. I ask Allah to send down on us His wisdom, His hikmah, so that we can have a light to illuminate our way through the sometimes confusing world that's out there. O Allah, help us and our future generations to know and love Your beautiful way of Islam. Let us all hold fast to the rope of Allah that He extends to us. Let us all become a good example for others. Ya Allah, let us become a justly balanced community, Ummah al-Wasat, and let each one of us become a witness to nations, as You describe in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 143. We ask Allah to guide us in our actions, purify our intentions, and bless our work and guide our plans. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. وأقم الصلاة.